Welcome back. Take a slow breath and let your mind settle, because in this chapter, the path before me sharpens. The threads that once drifted loosely begin to weave together. People, decisions, moments, all gathering toward a point I can no longer step away from. In what comes next, you will hear how the first true consequences of the world's shifting power finally touched my life, changing not only what I saw, but who I was becoming. Walk with me. The next chapter begins now. There is a kind of silence that only comes before a kingdom breaks. A silence sharp enough to cut skin. A silence heavy enough to bend steel. A silence intimate, as if the world itself knows something sacred is about to die. Babylon held a silence for weeks. The markets were busy, the temples crowded, the gardens blooming, the river shimmering with sunlight, and yet everywhere I walked, the city felt like a man holding his breath, waiting, watching, afraid, not of enemies, not of foreign armies, afraid of us, afraid of what was happening behind palace walls, afraid of the fracture between mother and son, afraid of the war coming from within. The council chamber was stifling, thick with incense, heavy with secrets. The nobles gathered first, their jeweled hands fidgeting. The priests arrived in white robes that hid trembling bones. Even the generals, men who had walked through jungles and watched elephants tear through infantry, looked uneasy, but none dared speak, not until I entered. Their heads bowed, but I could feel their eyes studying me the way one studies a torch in a room soaked with oil. I said, "Speak." I said, "It was the high priest of Marduk who found courage first." "Majesty," he said carefully, "there are disturbances." "Where?" "In the palace." A breath in the prince's wing. The room tensed. I leaned back, my face calm, my pulse steady. "Speak plainly," another priest whispered. "He gathers men at night," a noble added. "And weapons," a general muttered. "And gold." Ashur-nadin finally stepped forward. "He is amassing supporters," he said grimly. "Commanders, young soldiers, sons of noble families." Someone dared to say it aloud. A coup. The word struck the chamber like a spear. I closed my eyes, not because I was surprised, but because hearing the word made the wound real. The council waited for my fury, but fury did not come. Only sorrow, and beneath sorrow, resolve, cold, unbreakable resolve. I opened my eyes. "Leave us," I said, one by one, terrified to remain, yet more terrified to disobey. They left the chamber. Only Ashur-nadin stayed. He bowed his head. "You knew this day might come," he whispered. "I hoped it would not," I answered. "But hope is not a strategy." I sent for him. I sent soldiers, messengers, servants. Each returned with the same answer. "He refuses." Refuses. A queen summons him, and he refuses. But a mother summons him, and he hides. Cowardice is a strange tragedy. It can wear the face of a king even before the crown touches the head. At last, on the third night, I decided to go to him myself, not as queen, not armored, not guarded as a mother. His wing of the palace was dark, too dark. Torches burned low, curtains drawn tight, guards pacing with rigid spines and hollow eyes. They bowed when they saw me, but fear radiated off them like heat from sun-baked stone. When I reached the door to his chamber, the guards stepped aside. One whispered, "He may not receive you." I placed a hand on the door. "I am not asking." I entered. The air smelled of wine and frustration and sleepless nights. My son stood by the window, armor half fastened, sword belt hanging loose, eyes fixed on the city, as if trying to see a future that still refused him. He did not turn. "You should have knocked," he said. "You should have answered," I replied. His jaw clenched. "Mother." My heart swelled painfully. It had been weeks since he used that word without venom. But then he turned, and the softness vanished. "What do you want?" I stepped closer. "To understand you." He laughed bitterly. "You understand everything, Mother, except me." I breathed slowly. "You gather men. Yes, you gather weapons. Yes, you gather whispers and lies, truths." He snapped. "Truths your court refuses to say aloud." I stared at him. He stared right back. Then he stepped forward, eyes burning. "You should have given me the throne. You were not ready." "I am ready now." His shout echoed off stone, and suddenly I did not see a man enraged. I saw a child crying from wounds I had never tended, a child who walked behind a legend and felt he lived in shadow, a child who saw the world kneeling before his mother and wondered if it would ever kneel for him. I whispered, "You want the throne because you believe it will fill your emptiness." His face twisted. "You call it emptiness? I call it longing. I call it hunger. I call it destiny." He walked in a slow circle around me, voice low and trembling. "You built Babylon with your hands. You conquered kingdoms. You faced storms and jungles and gods." He turned sharply. "And you expect me to do nothing? You expect me to wait until you die?" I felt the blow, not because of the words, but because of the truth they revealed. He could not wait. He would not wait. He wanted my throne, and perhaps my death. My heart cracked, but I kept my voice steady. "You are my son," I whispered, "not my enemy." He shook his head slowly. "No, Mother." His voice changed, soft, lethal, heartbreaking. "I am your heir." A tear formed behind my eyes and refused to fall. He saw it, and something inside him hardened further. "You are too strong," he whispered. "The people worship you. As long as you live, I will never be king." I reached toward him. He stepped back. "Do not touch me." The words cut deeper than any spear from India. I steadied myself. "Then let me abdicate," I whispered. The words tasted like blood. His head snapped up. "What? Abdicate?" I repeated. "Step down. Give you the throne. Peacefully. With blessing." His breath hitched, because even he had not expected this. "You would." His voice cracked. "For you." I said. For Babylon, for peace, for the first time in months. His eyes softened. He took a step toward me, then another for a moment, a fragile, precious moment. I thought he might embrace me, thought he might crumble in my arms, thought he might ask forgiveness, thought he might become my son again. But instead, he whispered, "It is too late." My heart stopped. Too late? He looked at me, eyes hollow. They told me you would say this. Who? Men who fear you. They told me, he continued, that your abdication would be a trick, a way to keep control. I shook my head. No, they told me, he whispered, that you would never truly step aside. In your heart, you would still rule. He took a breath. And they are right. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. He stepped back into the shadow. I cannot be king while you live. Silence, cold, ancient, final. I stared at him. You would kill your mother? He did not answer, because the answer was yes. I turned away, not out of weakness, but because my soul could not bear to see his face in that moment. My voice was barely audible. I will go. He stiffened. Go away to another land, into exile, far from Babylon. His breath was sharp. You would leave? For you, I whispered, for Babylon. His face broke, just for a second. A flicker, a ghost of the boy he had once been. Then he nodded slowly. Then go, he said. He did not thank me. He did not touch me. He did not say farewell. He did not ask for forgiveness. He simply said, go, and I, Queen of Babylon, conqueror of kings, storm of the east, felt something break inside me that no war had ever touched. I left before dawn, not in ceremony, not in procession, not in glory. In silence, Ashur-nadin alone accompanied me to the edge of the palace gates. He bowed his head, eyes burning. Majesty, do not do this. I must, I whispered. He fell to his knees. You are Babylon, he said. Without you, Babylon will stand, I said softly. My son will make sure of it. He shook his head. He will break what you built. Then perhaps, I whispered sadly, that is what must be. How can this be fate? He cried. I touched his shoulder. It is not fate, I said. It is motherhood. Tears spilled down his cheeks. He bowed so low, his forehead touched the stones. Majesty, please let me go with you. No, I said gently. You must stay. You are Babylon's last shield. He trembled. And who shields you? No one, I whispered. No one ever has. I left through a small side gate, used by servants, wearing a cloak, hood low, feet silent on the stones. No trumpets, no banners, no guards. The queen of the world, leaving her throne, like a shadow slipping into dawn. As the first light touched the horizon, I whispered to the city I had built, remember me, and Babylon, vast, glowing, eternal, whispered back, we will. There is a kind of quiet that only belongs to those who have lost everything. Not the quiet of sleep, not the quiet of peace, a deeper quiet, the quiet that follows a scream, that never leaves the throat. That was the quiet that walked beside me on the road of exile. No army marched at my back. No banners rose above my head. No trumpets announced my journey. No stone was carved to mark my passing. The queen who once commanded the East walked alone. I did not ride a chariot. I did not sit upon a horse. I walked step by step, stone by stone, my feet remembering the ground as if relearning the world from the beginning. The cloak around my shoulders was plain, rough, scratchy, the fabric of commoners, a far cry from the silks that once followed my every movement like tame winds. But exile requires humility or madness, perhaps both. The road stretched ahead as if it had no end. Dust rose with each step, dry and bitter in my throat. The sky was a harsh white, the sun relentless, but none of these things hurt me. What hurt was the emptiness at my side, a space once meant for a child who loved me, a boy whose laughter had once been the softest music of my mornings. I pressed a hand to the fabric covering my chest. I left to protect him, I whispered to the desert air, and he let me go to protect himself. The wind made no comment. Winds rarely comfort fallen queens. When the sun dropped behind the dunes like a dying ember, I built a small fire. The flames were weak, as uncertain as my hands, but they burned, and that was enough. I sat on the sand, legs folded beneath me, cloak around my shoulders, watching the fire flicker like a frightened creature. The stars rose, bright, cold, indifferent. I had slept in gilded chambers and on battlefields drenched in blood. I had slept under ceilings painted with the heavens and under jungles thick with heat. But this was different. This was the sleep of someone who no longer had a place, and yet I did not feel fear, only exhaustion, a deep bone weight exhaustion that had been waiting years to claim me. I closed my eyes, but sleep did not come. Instead, memories came. My son's first laugh, his tiny hand wrapped around my finger, his voice calling, "Mother," his feet running down palace halls. Then his voice grown deeper, his eyes grown colder, his words grown sharper. "You cannot rule forever. I will never be king while you live. Go." I exhaled a trembling breath. "May the gods forgive him." I whispered, "May they forgive me." Because forgiveness, not love, is the true currency between mothers and sons. The next morning, I reached a village on the fringes of the empire, a small place, mud walls, worn streets, children barefoot with dust clinging to their ankles. A shepherd paused and stared at me, not in recognition, thankfully, but in curiosity. A lone woman, a traveler, a stranger. It had been decades since anyone looked at me without fear or awe or reverence. He approached cautiously. "You are alone," he said. I nodded, and wounded, I nodded again. He hesitated. "You may take water," he said. "Our well is for all who pass. Kindness, small, unexpected, yet warm as fire." I I touched my fingers to my forehead in thanks. He studied me. You look like someone, he said. Someone from a story. I smiled faintly. All women look like stories from certain angles. He blinked at my answer, smiled awkwardly, and left me in peace. That night, I slept beside the village well, the sound of water, soft as breath, and for the first time in years, I slept deeply, without dreams. Weeks passed. I walked through valleys where shepherds sent to their flocks, through small towns where no one knew my name, and my face was just another face, through markets where laughter flowed easily, and no one bowed their head. When I passed, I bought bread with coins I had taken from Babylon. I carried water in a clay jug balanced on my hip. I mended my own clothes. I washed dust from my feet. I slept beneath trees or on woven mats offered by kind strangers, and slowly, almost painfully, I began to feel human again, not divine, not legendary, not untouchable. Human. It was a strange feeling. Humans feel cold. Humans fear death. Humans bleed without armies rising to avenge them. And yet, humanity brought me something I had not felt in decades. Freedom. A freedom I had never known. On the throne of Babylon. One night, in a river town glowing with lantern light, I sat quietly in the corner of a tavern. A storyteller stood on a platform, surrounded by listeners. Children sat cross-legged at his feet. Men leaned forward with ale mugs in hand. Women laughed softly behind their veils. He lifted his arms. Tonight, he declared, we speak of the Queen of Babylon, the great Semiramis. My breath halted. The crowd cheered. The storyteller spun tales of me, but not the me I knew, not the woman who sweat under armor and bled on jungle floors. No, he spoke of a goddess with wings of fire who commanded storms, who tamed lions, who could kill with a glance. He spoke of India, not as the bitter, muddy war I fought, but as a place I conquered in a single night. The crowd gasped at every lie, every exaggeration, every fantasy. And me, I sat there, hood, low, face hidden, listening to the story of myself as told by a world that needed its myths. A soft laughter escaped me, because somewhere between truth and legend is where immortality hides, and I, sitting unnoticed among strangers, felt no anger, only a quiet sadness and an even quieter pride. Days later, I reached a mountain pass where a shrine to Ishtar was carved into stone, solitary, ancient, half forgotten. I stood before the weathered statue, wind curling my cloak around my ankles. Ishtar, I whispered, you who knew both love and war. My voice broke. I was both, and I lost both. A tear rolled down my cheek, the first to fall since the day I left Babylon. I let it fall, let it hit the stone, let the mountain witness it, because mountains keep secrets better than people ever can. As I walked down the other side of the mountain, I realized something. I could continue wandering until the world forgot me, until my bones turned to dust in some nameless land, or I could return, not to reclaim power, not to challenge my son, but to see from afar whether Babylon still breathed, whether the throne still lived, whether the child I raised had become the king I hoped for, or the king I feared. My heart tightened. I whispered to the wind, I will see him one last time. And the wind, gentle as a mother's breath, answered, Go. There are journeys meant to be triumphant, journeys taken with banners, with trumpets, with soldiers marching in golden ranks. And then there are journeys taken alone at dusk, with a cloak pulled low and a heart pulled even lower. Journeys a queen should never have to take. Journeys a mother must. I walked for days, moving like a ghost across plains that once shook under the thunder of my armies. No one recognized me, no one bowed, no one whispered my name. For the first time in my life, the world passed by without expecting anything from me. And yet, with every step closer to Babylon, the weight in my chest grew heavier, because I did not know which truth would hurt more. To find my son ruling wisely, proving I had been wrong to fear him, or to find him ruling foolishly, proving I had been right. Both truths were knives. It was only a matter of which one would pierce deeper. I reached Babylon at twilight. The city rose on the horizon, like a memory carved from sunlight and stone. Blue glazed walls, golden gates, towering ziggurats, gardens spilling green over terraces like rivers frozen in air. My city, my masterpiece, my wound. I stood on a ridge of stone, watching the sun paint the gates in amber and gold. The last time I had seen these walls, they had bowed to me. Tonight, they did not even know I existed. I lowered my hood, letting the wind brush my hair. My Babylon, I whispered, voice trembling. Do you still remember me? A breeze rolled across the plain, warm, familiar, almost tender, and for a moment I let myself imagine that it carried the city's answer. Always, I could not enter openly. My presence would stir trouble, rumors, panic, rebellion, hope, all dangerous. So I approached the western gate as any traveler would. A merchant caravan passed, lanterns swinging from wooden beams. Their camels groaned, bells chiming softly. I stepped among them silently. The guards at the gate glanced at me once. A woman in a plain cloak, dust on her sandals, weariness in her posture, and dismissed me. The irony did not escape me. A lifetime spent being unstoppable, unignorable, undeniable. And now I moved through the gates of Babylon like a grain of sand, slipping through fingers. Perhaps that was mercy, perhaps that was punishment. Inside, Babylon breathed as beautifully as ever, and yet differently. Children played near the fountains, their laughter rising like sparks. Merchants argued loudly, voices bright with life. Priests chanted hymns that rolled like smoke through the temple courts. But something had changed, not in the stones, not in the gardens, in the people. They walked not with pride, but with unease. Their eyes darted, their whispers trembled, their movements felt tight, as if a net had been thrown over the city, and they were careful not to tear it. Babylon looked alive, but not free, and I, walking among them, unrecognized, felt a cold dread settle deep into my bones. I stopped near a group of women selling figs and pomegranates. Their voices were low, their eyes watchful. He raised taxes again for another temple, they say, and not even his mother dared tax the gardeners. His mother was wiser. His mother hushed. Do not speak her name. My heart squeezed. Do not speak her name. As if I were a ghost, a forbidden memory. A warning from the past. I moved on. At a potter's stall, two men whispered while shaping clay. His soldiers took the harvest from the northern farms. He says, it is to strengthen the army. He fears shadows. He fears his own shadow. He fears the ghost of the queen. They laughed nervously. I did not. Night fell like ink spilling across the sky. Torches lit the palace walls, their flames rising in streams of gold. The palace, my palace, glowed like a crown. My feet slowed, my breath caught. I could not enter. I knew that, but I could stand on the outer terrace, overlooking the throne courtyard. I climbed the narrow stone stairs I had walked 1,000 times, in glory and in battle. Now I walked them as a shadow. At the top, the palace looked different, not physically, emotionally. It felt cold, even from a distance. I could sense it. The walls that once pulsed with life now felt hollow. The windows dimmer, the gardens less fragrant, the fountain slower, as if Babylon itself held its breath under the weight of its new king. Voices echoed below, God's shifting formation, then footsteps, measured, confident, heavy with authority, yet light with youth. I leaned against the stone balcony and looked down. My son entered the courtyard. He walked with his chin high, robes draping like shadows around him, a sword at his side, a staff in his hand, tall, handsome, imperial, a king in appearance. But his eyes carried exhaustion, fear, paranoia, ambition sharpened into hostility. I saw myself in him. I saw Nina's in him, and I saw something else, a darkness neither of us had given him, something born from resentment, fed by men who envied me, nourished by his own unmet hunger. He stopped beneath the torchlight. His face was harder, sharper, older. He looked like a man who had not slept in weeks, a man constantly listening for footsteps behind him. My heart ached. I reached out a trembling hand, as if I could touch the air between us. My son. The words caught in my throat. My child. He did not hear me. Of course not. I was a ghost watching her son become king, in all the wrong ways. As I watched, a servant approached him trembling. My king, the servant whispered. The farmers in the west beg leniency. My son raised a hand sharply. Silence. I do not wish to hear excuses from peasants. The servant bowed deeply. My king. Silence, he repeated, voice colder than stone. If they cannot pay, take their fields. The army grows restless. I must feed it. My heart cracked. not because of cruelty. Cruelty can be corrected. Because of blindness. Blindness to the people. Blindness to the land. Blindness to the lessons I had bled to learn. He walked on, cloak trailing behind him, torches flickering in his wake. I pressed a hand to my mouth to keep from crying out. This was not the boy I raised. This was not the king I wanted. This was a man shaped by fear of his own mother. A man trying to prove he did not need her. A man trying to outrun her shadow by casting his own over the city. A man who would break Babylon because he feared Babylon loved me more. My knees weakened. I sank against the stone and let the truth strike me like a spear. My exile had not saved him. It had doomed him. He needed my counsel, my guidance, my harsh truths, my wisdom. Instead, I had given him freedom too early, and that freedom was poisoning him. I stood, slowly, painfully. The moon hung above the palace like a pale, watchful eye. My son disappeared into the throne hall, and I made a choice I had not considered since the night he ordered me to leave, a choice that would define the rest of my life and his. I whispered to the wind, I must speak to him, not as queen, not as ruler, not as legend, as mother. But the wind answered with a chill sharper than steel. He will not listen. I inhaled deeply, then I will not speak. I whispered, I will warn, and I turned away from the palace for the last time, a queen walking down the stone stairs as silently as she had climbed them, a mother walking away from the sun she could no longer save, a legend walking deeper into the shadows of her own story. There are moments when the world tries to stop you, not with armies, not with storms, with signs, subtle, gentle, inevitable. Signs sent not to frighten, but to prepare. The night after I watched my son in the palace courtyard, I left Babylon again, not in grief, not in anger, in a kind of numbness that feels like walking through smoke after a building has burned down, a numbness so deep that even sorrow loses its weight. The world felt muted, the sky pale, my senses distant from my body, as if I were already fading into a realm beyond flesh. But I walked, for what else does a woman do when her throne is lost, her child is broken, and her story is nearing its final page? She walks toward whatever the gods have written, or toward whatever she will write herself. I had traveled only a day from Babylon when I saw it, an eagle, black, feathered, one eye clouded white, wings enormous, as if cut from the night itself. It perched on a dead tree, alone, unmoving. I slowed. Something ancient inside me recognized the omen. Eagles were symbols of kings, symbols of triumph, symbols of divine favor. But this eagle, this wounded, solitary creature with one blind eye, was not triumph. It was warning. It stared at me with its single burning eye, unblinking, as if it knew my name. A whisper ran through my blood. Do not look away. So I did not. I met its gaze, and then, slowly, deliberately, it opened its beak and gave a cry, but not the cry of predator, not the cry of a hunter, a cry of mourning. The sound cut through me, raw, jagged, ancient, as if the world itself lamented something that had not yet happened. The eagle spread its wings, lifted into the air, and vanished into the direction I knew I was destined to walk. A cold shudder ran up my spine. That was no animal. That was a message. By dusk, I reached the salt plains, an endless shimmering white that swallowed the horizon. Wind whipped fine grains into the air. The ground cracked beneath my sandals. My cloak snapped behind me like the remnants of a torn banner. I saw a hut, strange, half collapsed, leaning as if exhausted from years of loneliness. Smoke curled from a tiny hole in the roof. I approached cautiously. An old woman stepped out, eyes bright as embers, hair white as bone. She looked at me as though she had been expecting me for a century. "You walk with grief," she said. Her voice was rough, shaped by winds and solitude. I swallowed. "Who are you?" "A watcher," she said. "A listener, a woman who knows what lies in silence." She stepped closer, oddly quick for her age. Her gaze pierced. "You left a kingdom," she said. "You left a son, but your journey is not finished." My mouth went dry. "Do you know what lies ahead of me?" She nodded slowly. "I know what lies ahead for all who have loved too fiercely." "What lies ahead?" I whispered. She leaned so close. I felt her breath. "A final choice." I froze. "What choice?" "A mother's choice," she whispered. "The last one she ever makes." My heart dropped into my stomach. She turned away and pointed her crooked finger toward the darkening horizon. "Walk east. There you will find what hunts you." I trembled. "I am hunted? All legends are," she said simply, "especially by their endings." I felt suddenly weak, as if the salt plains were trying to swallow my feet. "Thank you," I whispered. She nodded. "May the gods be kinder to you than they were to your father." I stiffened. My father. But she had already gone inside and closed the door. The wind howled across the plains. I walked on, heart pounding, because she was right. Something haunted me, and it was getting closer. 3 days later, I learned what haunted me. Men, not bandits, not foreigners, men of Babylon, my son's soldiers. I spotted them from a distance, full silhouettes, armor glinting beneath cloaks, horses stamping the dust. They were not on patrol. They were waiting for me. I slipped behind a boulder, pulled my cloak tight, forced my breath to slow. Their voices drifted. Orders came from the palace. "Find her before she reaches the border. The king does not want her alive." My throat tightened. My son had sent them, not just to capture me, not just to chase me, to kill me. The numbness broke, pain flooded in, a pain sharper than any spear, any jungle wound, any betrayal of court. I pressed a shaking hand to my mouth to stop the cry rising inside, but tears I had held back for months, finally escaped. He wanted me dead, my own son, my flesh, my legacy. He wanted me gone, because my existence cast a shadow he could never outrun. The men split into pairs, scouting the plains. I remained still as a corpse. When they finally rode on, the wind carried their final words to me. If the queen reaches the mountains, we'll never find her, the king said. End her before then. End her. My son's order. My death sentence. Given with the same tone. He once used to ask for honey cakes. My knees weakened, but I did not fall. A queen does not fall until the earth itself commands it. By nightfall, I reached a high cliff overlooking a gorge of stone and darkness. The moon was rising, large, pale, indifferent. I stood at the edge, wind whipping my cloak. I remembered the old woman's words, a final choice. I knew what she meant. Should I keep running and let him destroy himself in paranoia? Should I return and plunge Babylon into civil war? Should I confront him and force him to choose between his ambition and his mother? Or should I die so he could be free? A mother's final choice, a queen's final sacrifice, a life for a kingdom. My breath trembled. I leaned forward slightly, the abyss yawning below. The wind pushed against my back, as if inviting me. It would be easy, quick, final. But then a shadow passed across the moon. I looked up. The eagle, the same one-eyed creature, circling, watching, guiding. It screamed a sharp, urgent cry, not mourning this time. Warning. I stepped away from the cliff, as if waking from a trance. No, I whispered, not like this. Death would not claim me by temptation. If I died, it would be by destiny, or by the hand of the sun, who no longer knew how to love me. When I returned to the plains, I saw flames in the distance, a campsite, 4 horses, 4 soldiers, the men hunting me. I approached, silently, keeping to the shadows. They were speaking. The king says, she has become a threat. A queen in exile is a beacon for rebellion. Better if she vanishes. Tomorrow we comb the southern ridge. I trembled. My son had not just sent them. He had prepared them, taught them what words to use, what lies to tell themselves, so they could kill without guilt. I stepped closer. One soldier shivered. Sometimes, he whispered, it feels wrong, killing a woman, killing a queen. His companion muttered, she is not a queen anymore, just a shadow, a shadow. Yes, that was what I had become. But shadows have teeth, and a queen, even fallen, remains a queen. I retreated into the darkness, pulled my cloak tighter, and whispered, if this is the path toward death, then let me walk it standing. Night does not fall on the hunted the way it falls on others. It does not bring rest. It does not bring silence. It does not bring forgetting. Night becomes a blade, cold, thin, pressed against the back of your neck, with the promise that one wrong step will open your throat. That was the night I walked into. The night the queen was hunted. The sky was moonless. A dark ball overturned upon the earth. Stars flickered like silver wounds. The wind carried sand in sharp little spirals that stung the skin. I moved through it like a shadow. Though I no longer believed in shadows, I believed only in breath. The next one, and then the next, and the thin rope of life that stretched between them. Behind me, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of hooves, slow, methodical, purposeful, not the pace of travelers, not the wandering of lost men, the rhythm of hunters who know their prey is close. I tightened my cloak around me, gripping the fabric in both hands. The ground shifted beneath my feet. Sand, stone, sand again. I stepped silently, each footfall placed with the precision of a soldier who had learned to survive long before she learned to rule. But even a queen's silence cannot silence the world. A pebble rolled from beneath my sandal. The faintest click, hooves stopped. The plains fell still. The silence was absolute, so complete I could hear my heartbeat throbbing in my ears. Then a voice, she's near. A second voice, fan out. Don't let her reach the ridge. A third, the king wants her alive if possible. A pause, and dead if not. My breath hitched. Alive if possible. Dead if not. So that was the final order, the truth behind the whisper. My son had not sent them to capture. He had sent them to erase. My legs trembled, but only for a heartbeat. Fear is a luxury the doomed cannot afford. The hoofs resumed, not one horse, not two, but four, moving in a tightening circle. I dropped to my knees, pressing myself against the ground, letting the sand swallow my shape. A distant rustle, leather creaked, a bowstring pulled tight. I rolled a split second before the arrow struck. It sliced through the air with a hiss sharp as a serpent, and buried itself in the sand where my shoulder had been. East, someone shouted. She moved east. I sprinted. The sand dragged at my feet. The wind slapped my face. My breath tore from my lungs as if refusing to stay in my body. Another arrow. Closer, I dove behind a cluster of rocks, body scraping against stone. Pain shot through my ribs. India's wounds screaming awake. But there was no time to gasp. Pain had to be swallowed whole. I pressed my back against a cold rock, trying to steal my breath. Hooves came closer. One rider dismounted, boots on sand, the soft crunch of death approaching. He was only a few steps away. I closed my eyes. The night held its breath. Then a whisper of wings, the eagle, a rush of air, a screech sharp enough to tear the darkness. The horse reared. The soldier cursed. Chaos erupted. I seized the moment. I ran. I did not get far. Pain exploded through my thigh. A hot, brutal impact. An arrow. It drove me to my knees. Sand filling my hands. My blood already soaking into the earth. For a heartbeat, I could not breathe. Pain like this does not feel human. It feels cosmic, like the universe itself, piercing you to remind you you're still mortal. Voices rose behind me. She's hit. Finish it. Bring back her head. My hands clawed at the arrow shaft. I knew better than to pull it, but instinct is a wild animal. I snapped the end off to free my movement, biting back. a cry so fierce I tasted blood in my mouth. My leg shook violently. Every heartbeat sent fire through the wound, but I stood. A queen stands, even if she stands on blood. Ahead of me, the land dipped sharply, a narrow ravine, split between two jagged ridges. Only a fool would descend into such a place at night, but I was no longer choosing between wisdom and foolishness, only between life and death. I limped toward the ravine, each step agony, each breath a battle. My vision blurred from pain, stars smeared across my sight. Behind me, shouts grew louder. She's going for the gorge. Cut her off. Surround her. I stumbled down the steep slope, loose stones sliding beneath my feet. My cloak snagged on thorny roots. My wounded leg buckled. I fell, tumbling, rolling. Stones tearing at my skin, dust choking my throat. When I hit the bottom, the impact knocked the breath from my lungs. For a moment, the world dimmed, went silent, went cold. I thought, this is where it ends. But then, wings, a rush of air, the eagle landing on a branch overhead, its one eye burning into me, like a flame refusing to die. No, I whispered through clenched teeth. Not yet. I forced myself to move, pulling my body along the ravine floor, hands sinking into dirt and stone, climbing, crawling, dragging myself through the narrow canyon as shouts echoed above. Search below. She fell inside. Light the torches. Shadows danced. As torches began their descent, the ravine glowed red, with the fire meant to flush me out. I crawled deeper. Blood dripped. Sand clung to the wound. My vision wavered, but I crawled because queens do not beg fate. They wrestle it. They bite it. They bleed through it. At the end of the ravine, hidden behind a curtain of dead vines, I saw it. A small cave, dark, narrow, barely large enough for a body. Hope flickered through me, thin and trembling. I clawed my way inside. As footsteps crunched above, the cave was damp, chilling the sweat on my skin. The air smelled of earth and old stone. I pressed myself against the wall, breathing shallowly, body shaking with exhaustion. Torches passed overhead, orange light flickering over the ravine walls. One soldier paused. Do you hear that? Another hissed. Only the wind. Check the end of the gorge. No, she bleeds out tonight. Come morning we'll find her carcass. Their footsteps moved away, slowly, slowly, until only silence remained. I exhaled a trembling breath. I had survived, barely, but survival is still survival. I tore a strip from my cloak and bound my wound tightly, hands shaking violently. Blood soaked the fabric at once. Hot, sticky, relentless. I leaned my head back against the stone wall, eyes closing. Pain thundered through my body. The cave swallowed me. Darkness crept in at the edges, and then, from the opening, a single feather drifted in, black, silent, soft, the eagle's feather, a sign, a warning, or a promise. I did not know, but I held it against my chest and whispered, I am not finished. The cave heard me. The night heard me, and perhaps, just perhaps, the gods heard me. There is a threshold between life and death that only the wounded truly know. It is not a door, not a bridge, not a boundary. It is a fog, thick, weightless, a lullaby made of whispers and fever, a place where breath becomes uncertain and the body forgets which direction the soul is meant to follow. That is where I drifted, as blood seeped through my bandage, warm against the cold stone of the cave. The world outside grew distant, voices fading, torches dimming, the wind flickering like an exhausted flame. All that remained was the rhythm of my heartbeat, slower, weaker, as if each beat questioned whether it should bother to strike the next. I lay on the cave floor, my cloak half beneath me, the black feather still clutched in my trembling fingers. If I were a lesser woman, I would have died then, but queens, even broken ones, die differently. At first it was only warmth, gentle, almost comforting. Then it grew, heat blooming through my veins, thick as molten gold. My skin burned, my breath rest, my vision swam, shadows lengthened and curled like serpents across the cave walls. I blinked, but when my eyes opened, I was not in the cave. I stood in the gardens of Babylon at night, under a sky the color of bruised violet. The vines trembled, the fountains froze mid-splash. The stars hung motionless, and at the center of the garden stood a woman, tall, radiant, draped in gold threads that shimmered like sunlight under water. Her hair fell in black waves. Her eyes glowed like polished amber. Her face was mine, but older, younger, timeless. I whispered, voice catching in my raw throat. Am I dreaming? She smiled, dying. She corrected softly. There is a difference. I swallowed hard. Who are you? You, she said simply. The part of you that remembers. The part of you that endured before kingdoms and crowns and children. My knees weakened. Why are you here? To ask you a question. She stepped closer, her presence heavy as myth when death calls you. She whispered, will you answer? I stared at her, at myself, at the version of me that had never bowed, never bled, never broken. I don't know, I murmured. She reached out and touched the center of my forehead. Fire spread from her fingertip. You are not meant, she said, to die on the ground. Like a forgotten wanderer, her voice deepened, ancient, relentless. You are Semiramis, storm of the east, mother of kingdoms, daughter of legend. Her eyes burned brighter. You do not die in caves. You do not die in exile. You do not die by accident. The garden trembled, vines writhing like serpents, fountains shattering into starlight. You die, she whispered, when your story is done, not before. I closed my eyes. Is my story done? She leaned in, her lips near my ear. No. The garden exploded into light, and I fell. I gasped awake. The cave was spinning, my skin drenched in sweat, my throat dry as sand. Pain pulsed through my leg, hot and vicious. I tried to rise. My body slammed back down. Black spots danced across my vision. The edges of the world curled inward. I tasted metal on my tongue. Blood. My fingers trembled, but still clutched the eagle's feather. Not yet. I whispered to the dark. Not yet. My voice cracked. I am not done. But my body disagreed. It wanted to give in, to collapse, to let the darkness take me gently. I forced my eyes open. Outside the cave, dawn was beginning, a muted gray glow creeping across the ravine, and with it, voices, far away, growing closer, tracks. Lead this way. She can't have gone far. If she's alive, she won't be for long. My pulse surged. My breath hitched. They were coming back. Hunters refreshed. Horses fed. Torches ready. If they found me here, bleeding and half-conscious, I would not survive the next heartbeat. I pressed my palm to the stone wall, trying to lift myself. My arm shook violently. The world tilted. I slid back to the ground, teeth gritted against a cry. Outside the cave, footsteps shifted. Check the ravine again. Look for any openings she might be hiding. I inhaled sharply. My ribs burned. Closing my eyes, I whispered the truth I had avoided since the first arrow struck. I may die here. The cave breathed around me, soft, cold, final. I thought of Babylon, of its blue walls, of its gardens, of its markets, of its torches flickering at dusk. I thought of my palace, of Ashur-nadin's loyalty, of the throne hall that once echoed with my footsteps. I thought of my son, his first smile, his first steps, his first fear, his first lie, his first betrayal. A tear slid down my cheek, not for myself, for him, for the man he had become, for the king he would fail to be, for the son I had lost, long before he sent men to kill me. Softly, barely, a breath, I whispered his name. Then a sound, a soft flutter. I opened my eyes. The eagle stood at the cave entrance, its single sharp eye fixed on me, its feathers ruffling in the dawn wind, a creature born of sky and omen, a creature that had followed me from Babylon to the plains, to this cave, a creature that should not be here, but it was. It stepped inside, slow, deliberate, until it stood less than an arm's length from me. Its gaze bored into mine. A whisper filled the cave, not from the eagle, from the wind, from the world, from fate. Rise. I tried. My hand slipped. The eagle screeched, loud, piercing, furious, as if the sound itself were pushing me forward. I tried again. My body responded, barely, weakly, painfully, but it responded. I dragged myself to the wall, gripped a jagged stone, and forced my body upright. My vision flickered, my legs trembled, my breath rattled, but I stood, and the eagle, satisfied, spread its wings and flew out into the rising sun. I inhaled deeply. A single decision formed in my mind, sharp, clear, undeniable. I would not die in this cave, and if death still wanted me, it night would have to work harder, much harder. Dawn is cruel to those who bleed. It does not hide you. It does not soothe you. It exposes you, lays you bare in its pale, unforgiving light. And yet dawn was all I had. My body shook as I leaned against the cave wall, forcing myself into an upright stance that felt more like defiance than strength. The arrowhead still pulsed in my thigh, each heartbeat a hammer, pounding fire into the wound. My breath came shallow, my hands trembled, black spots flickered at the edges of my vision, but I stood, and that was enough to begin. Outside, the ravine glowed with newborn light. Dust motes drifted like tiny ghosts. The ground shimmered with the faintest trace of frost. I placed one foot forward, slow, fragile, like a child learning to walk. Pain seared up my leg, so sudden and violent that my body folded forward. My hands hit the dirt. My breath tore out in a strangled gasp. I tasted blood in my mouth. No, I whispered fiercely, teeth clenched. I did not survive India, for death to take me here. My fingers clawed at the ground. I dragged myself to a low boulder and hauled my body upright again. My vision swam, my ears rang, but I stood again. I leaned heavily on the stone and stepped forward, then another step, then another, each one an act of war against my own failing body, each one a declaration that the Queen of Babylon did not die crawling. Voices broke the still air, closer than before, sharper, alert. The tracks lead here. Something moved at sunrise. She can't have gone far. My pulse surged. I pressed myself against the cliffside, body trembling. A horse's silhouette appeared on the ridge above, dark against the morning light. The rider scanned the ravine. My breath caught in my throat. A second rider joined him, then a third, then all four. Their torches had burned out, but morning gave them better sight. I was exposed, bleeding, barely conscious. If they descended, I would not escape again. One rider leaned forward. I swear I saw movement check the cave. My heart froze. If they found the feather, the blood, the signs of struggle, it's empty. Another voice called, no fresh tracks inside. Then she crawled out, or died of blood loss. Spread out, we searched the gorge. King's orders. They split, two toward the north path, two toward the southern incline. None came down directly. A breath of relief burst painfully from my lungs, but it was temporary. Danger had not passed, only shifted. I had minutes, nothing more. I moved toward the far end of the ravine, dragging my body along the rock wall, where shadows still clung. Each step felt like climbing out of my own grave. Every few paces, my vision blurred. The world tilted. My knees buckled, but each time I fell, I rose again, slowly, relentlessly, as if some ancient muscle memory, older than queenship, older than empire, refused to let me die lying down. The ground sloped upward, rough, unstable. I grabbed roots, stones, anything that held halfway up. My injured leg gave out entirely. The world went black for a heartbeat. I thought, this is the moment. this is where it ends. But then a shadow passed overhead. Wings, the eagle. It circled once, twice, then perched on the ridge above. Its cry cut through my fog. A command, a summons, a refusal of death. I forced myself up the slope, teeth gritting, blood soaking through cloth. One step, another, one breath, another, until my hand closed around the edge of the ridge, and with a desperate, broken gasp, I pulled myself up. The eagle launched into the sky, as if leading me forward, and I followed. I stumbled across the ridge, each step leaving a dark red print in the dust. Blood loss dulled the world, sounds muffled, colors washed, pale, time stretched thin. The eastern plain opened before me, endless sand, dry shrubs, a line of distant hills. Somewhere beyond them, the borders of the empire. If I reached those hills, I would be beyond my son's reach. But between me and safety lay a truth I did not want to face. I was dying, not quickly, not quietly, but steadily, my body failing. With every heartbeat, I whispered to the sky, not yet, not until I choose. The wind answered softly, a warm gust brushing my cheek, as if carrying the breath of every ancestor who had ever lived or loved or lost. I followed it, limping, dragging, bleeding, alive, barely, but alive. By midday, the sun was merciless. Heat stabbed at my wounds. My throat burned, my lips cracked, my body staggered on instinct alone. Mind fading, vision narrowing to a tunnel of light. I saw the outline of a lone acacia tree. In the distance, shade, water, perhaps roots that might be dug, a place to rest. I aimed my broken body toward it. Halfway there, my strength snapped, my legs folded beneath me. The ground rushed up. I hit the dust hard, face scraping the earth, blood smearing the sand. I tried to push myself up. My arms trembled and collapsed. I lay there, breathing in short, shallow bursts, dust filling my mouth. The sky blurred above me, white, gold, red. I whispered to the earth, "Is this the end?" No answer came, not from gods, not from wind, not from memory, only silence, a silence deep enough to bury a queen. My eyes closed, darkness rushed in, a tide, a wave, a soft, final invitation. I felt myself fall, not physically, but inward, down into a deep well, where pain dissolved, and fear lost its voice, and everything grew quiet. For a heartbeat, I let go. For a heartbeat, I welcomed the dark. For a heartbeat, death felt like rest. And then a voice, soft, low, human, majesty. My eyes fluttered, a blur of shadow beside me, hands lifting my shoulders, water touching my cracked lips. A voice again, gentle, desperate. Majesty, open your eyes. I forced them open. Sunlight split into two blurry halos, and slowly, slowly, a face came into focus, a face I knew, a face I trusted, a face I never thought I'd see again. Ashur Nadine. He was kneeling beside me, dust on his clothes, fear in his eyes, his hands trembling as they held me upright. He whispered, voice breaking, I found you. My breath shuddered. You came? His eyes filled with tears. I always will. The world tilted. I collapsed into his arms, and the darkness took me. But this time, not alone. When darkness carries you, you do not feel its weight. You drift, untethered, unburdened, freed from the cruel arithmetic of breath and heartbeat. But when light tries to bring you back, that is when the pain returns. I woke slowly, like someone being lifted from the bottom of a black river. At first, I heard only sound, a crackling fire, low wind outside, the faint bubbling of water heating in clay. Then came scent, smoke, warm herbs, and the unmistakable scent of fresh linen. Then came touch, a blanket, soft, heavy, tucked carefully around my body, and only then did I open my eyes. The ceiling above me was woven reed and timber, a small, dimly lit hut, safe, hidden, far from the ravine where I'd left half my blood behind. My breath stuttered. A shadow moved, not a threat, not a soldier, not death. Ashur Nadin. He sat beside me, head bowed, hands clasped, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. He looked as if he had not slept in days. I parted my lips to speak, but the sound that emerged was barely a ghost. Ashur. He lifted his head instantly, eyes widening, majesty. His voice cracked on the second syllable. He leaned closer, relief flooding his face with a warmth I had not seen since the days of Babylon's flowering. You awake. I swallowed painfully. Where am I? A sanctuary, he whispered, hidden in the foothills, a place no soldier of the court knows. I used it once during the old war in the north. No one will find you here. I blinked slowly. Every muscle ached. My leg throbbed with a deep, pulsing ache that radiated up my spine. Am I dying? His expression hardened, not in anger, but in a grief that looked like fury. No, he said, you almost did, but you won't, not while I still breathe. His hands shook slightly as he reached for a cup, lifting it with careful steadiness. Drink, he murmured, it will ease the fever. He brought the cup to my lips. The water inside tasted of copper and herbs, but it was life, cool, necessary, pulling me back into myself. When I had swallowed enough, I exhaled shakily. You found me? He nodded gently. I followed the hunter's tracks. I prayed to every god that they'd be fools. And for once, they were. He looked away, the memory paining him. When I saw your blood in the dust, he swallowed hard. I thought I was too late. Silence stretched, thick, tender, unspoken. My voice was a whisper. You risked everything. He met my gaze, as if the truth itself hurt. For you, he said softly, without hesitation. There is nothing I would not risk. The words hung between us, dangerous, sacred. True, I looked away because facing that truth hurt more than any wound. Ashur Nadin set aside the cup and drew a clay bowl to his lap. Steam curled from it, carrying the scent of crushed myrrh and mountain sage. "Let me tend to your leg," he said quietly. I nodded, because refusal was impossible. He moved with reverence, not the ceremonial reverence of priests, but the reverence of someone who had nearly lost the most precious thing he knew. He unwrapped the bandage with slow, gentle care. Pain flared white behind my eyes. I clenched my teeth. His voice was low, soothing. I know it hurts. Breathe." He cleaned the wound, each touch careful, each motion steady. I watched him as he worked in silence. His hair had grown longer since I last saw him. Lines had deepened around his eyes, but his hands were unchanged, strong, capable, steady as stone. Hands that had carried me through India, hands that had held the reins of my chariot, hands that had lifted me from the ground in the ravine, as if lifting a fallen star. My breath trembled. "Why did you come?" I whispered without looking at him. "You should have stayed. You should have protected Babylon. You should have majesty," he said softly, cutting me off with words gentler than touch. "Babylon has soldiers, nobles, priests, walls taller than empires." He met my eyes then. "But it has only won you." The world tilted, not from fever, from truth. He finished wrapping the wound and sat back slowly. "You are not the city's walls," he murmured. "You are its heart." I should have denied it, should have deflected, should have said, in queenly fashion, "We do what we must," or some similar lie. But no words came, only silence. A silence that said everything. He stayed beside me as the sky darkened and the stars rose. No threats approached, no soldiers, no hunters, only wind and the quiet crackle of the fire. At one point, he brought me a bowl of broth. I managed a few sips. "You need sleep," he said gently. I nodded, though sleep felt frightening, as if it might take me into a darkness I would not return from. "Will you stay?" I whispered. He froze, as if the question struck somewhere he had locked away. Then he nodded. "I will stay," he said softly. "All night, all tomorrow, as long as you need." I closed my eyes. For the first time in months, the fear in my chest loosened its grip. I felt his presence beside me, not touching, not overreaching, simply there, a shield, a guardian, a man who had chosen me again and again and again. Sleep came slowly, not falling, but floating. His voice was the last thing I heard. "You are not alone, my queen." When I woke, pale light filtered into the hut. Ashur Nadin sat where he had been, leaning against the wall, eyes closed in, exhausted, half asleep. I spoke before, thinking, Ashur. His eyes opened instantly, alert, concerned. "How do you feel?" "Alive," I whispered. "Good," he murmured, relief softening his shoulders. "I was afraid." He didn't finish the thought. I didn't ask him to. But then his expression changed from relief to something heavier. Majesty, he said quietly, we cannot stay here long. My heart tightened. Your son's men search the plains. If they find tracks leading here. He didn't need to say the rest. I nodded painfully. Then we run. He shook his head. No, he said, voice firm. You run. I stay behind to mislead them. My breath stopped. Now, a queen must not be caught, and a loyal man must not be sacrificed. I snapped back. He met my gaze steadily. Majesty, I would die to keep you alive. The world blurred for a moment, with pain, with fear, with something deeper that felt dangerously close to sorrow. I swallowed hard. Ashur, I whispered, I cannot lose you too. Silence, heavy, fragile. He breathed in slowly. Then we face what comes together. A final truth settled between us. We were no longer queen and commander. We were two fugitives, two souls bound by loyalty that had grown into something unspoken and vast. And the path ahead would demand everything. My voice was a whisper. What must we do? He looked toward the mountains, beyond the foothills, and then he said the words that would change the course of my final fate. We head east to the land where no king of Babylon has ever had power. His jaw tightened. In the mountains, there are people who still speak your name with reverence. My breath caught. Who are they? He met my eyes. Those who believed you were the rightful goddess of the East. A chill swept through me, because fate was moving again, and the story of Semiramis was not done. Not yet. The mountains did not rise gently. They did not welcome us. They loomed, black, jagged, ancient, like the spines of some colossal creature, turned to stone by time itself. As we left the foothills behind, the plains of Babylon blurred into heat and memory. The air thinned, the dust changed, the wind carried the faint scent of cedar and cold. Ashur Nadine walked at my side, one hand always close enough to steady me without touching, as if afraid that even a brush of his fingers might break me. I leaned on the staff he had carved from dry wood the night before. Each step up the incline sent fire through my wounded thigh, but pain was now an old companion, familiar, almost reassuring. It told me I was still alive, alive, despite a son who wanted me dead, alive, despite soldiers hunting me, alive, despite the darkness that had nearly swallowed me whole. The mountains watched us ascend, silent, indifferent, ancient. They had seen queens rise and fall. Long before I was born, they would see many more after me. And yet, as I climbed, I felt the faintest hum in the air, a pulse beneath the stone, as if something here recognized me. We followed a narrow trail carved by goats and ghosts below us, a drop so deep the eye could not measure it. Above us, cliffs carved by gods in a violent mood. The wind howled, pulling at our cloaks, testing our balance, probing for weakness. Ashurnadin glanced back at me, leaned forward on the incline. He murmured, "Not back." I obeyed. He watched my steps, not with the impatience of a soldier, but with the quiet terror of a man who feared losing what he carried more than his own life. "Is this the path they take?" I asked. "The path," he whispered, "is never the same twice." My brow furrowed. He pointed toward the sky. "Up here, Majesty. The mountains choose. Choose, the mountains choose." The words settled inside my chest, like a prophecy half remembered. As we climbed, the wind changed, no longer sharp, no longer biting. It carried something else, a faint sound, almost like humming, almost like chanting, almost like a prayer, spoken from a distance, older than empires. I stopped. Ashur-nadin turned. "You hear it?" he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I whispered. "What is it?" He hesitated. "Those who revere you," he murmured, "are closer than I thought." My throat tightened. He continued, "They never believed you were just a queen. To them you were the daughter of the goddess Derceto, a divine being trapped in mortal form. I am not divine," I said softly. He looked at me with an expression I had never seen in him before, something between admiration and fear. "You survived what no mortal should. You built what no mortal could. And you walk still when death itself came for you." I lowered my gaze. "Survival does not make me a goddess." "No," he said quietly, "but it makes you a legend." The wind shifted again, warm this time, brushing my cheek like a gentle hand. For a moment, I felt something I hadn't felt since the days of Babylon's flowering, connected, as if the mountains were listening, as if the gods were listening, as if the world, in all its vast and brutal indifference, paused for a heartbeat to acknowledge that I still walked upon it. A glimpse of what was lost. Midway up the trail, we reached a plateau. Ashur-nadin helped me sit beneath a cedar tree, its branches heavy with dark needles. I closed my eye, breathing deeply. The air here was different, thinner, keener, alive. When I opened my eyes, the world below stretched endlessly. Babylon, the river, the plains, the faint dust of villages, the golden haze of evening rising. From here, my city looked small, beautiful, fragile, a jewel set in dust, and far away, barely visible, smoke rising from palace torches. A whisper escaped me. "My son." Ashur-nadin sat beside me, keeping a respectful distance. "He cannot reach you here," he said. "That is not what pains me," I murmured. "It is that I cannot reach him." A long silence stretched between us. Then, quietly, "He was a boy once," I whispered. "He held my hand when storms frightened him. He slept on my chest. He laughed when I told him stories." I swallowed back the heat behind my eyes. What became of that child? Ashur-nadin was silent for a long time. Then he said, "There is a grief, Majesty, that belongs only to mothers. The grief of watching a child grow into someone you no longer recognize." His words pierced me painfully, perfectly. I bowed my head. For a moment, I let myself grieve, not as queen, as mother. Then I inhaled slowly. "We must continue." He rose and offered his hand. For the first time, I took it, not as ruler, not as master, not as queen, as a woman who needed another human being to stand as dusk bled into night. The mountains finally opened into a narrow path, a slit in the stone, barely wide enough for two bodies to walk side by side. Torches flickered inside, though no human stood near them. I stiffened. Ashurnaden lowered his head. They know we are coming. Who? I whispered. He looked up at me. The ones who kept your name alive, even when Babylon tried to bury it. My heart thudded. And what do they want from me? He held my gaze. Not your crown. A pause. Your truth. The wind died. The mountains grew still. A feeling rippled through the air, like standing at the threshold of something holy and dangerous. Ashur Nadin stepped into the path. I followed. The stone walls closed around us, carved with ancient symbols, wings, serpents, suns, women with flowing hair, a goddess descending into water, symbols older than my birth, older than Babylon, older than the language of kings. The torches flared as I passed, as if greeting me, and then voices, dozens, soft, unified, rising in a low chant that vibrated in the stone beneath our feet. My breath caught. Ashur-nadin whispered, "They have been waiting for you for a very long time." I swallowed. "Why?" His answer came, like the strike of fate. Because a queen who has lost everything is finally ready to learn who she truly is. And so begins the final arc of Semiramis, the revelation, the prophecy, the truth behind her bloodline, and the final decision she must make between legend and life. The path opened as softly as a breath. One moment we were walking between stone walls, so narrow that the sky was a thin blue thread above us. The next, the world widened. A hidden valley stretched before us, bathed in the pale glow of early moonrise. Not a simple valley, not a village, something older, something sacred. Terraces of stone carved into the cliffside, lined with torches that burned with blue flame instead of gold. Streams of water flowed quietly from natural springs, trickling into small pools that shimmered like liquid glass, and scattered across the valley like stars fallen to earth, were figures draped in dark indigo cloth, hooded, silent, unmoving. As we stepped forward, one by one, they rose, dozens, scores, perhaps more. Their hoods turned toward me, as if drawn by a force older than choice. Ashur-nadin bowed his head. "We enter with peace," he said softly. A voice answered from among the shadows. "Peace is the only way one enters here." The speaker stepped forward, an older woman, her hair long and silver, her eyes sharp as obsidian. Her presence was quiet, but it carried with it the weight of someone who had never once needed to shout to be obeyed. She stopped before me, and when she lifted her face, the torches flickered as if wind had bowed to her. She removed her hood. Time had carved lines into her face, like inscriptions on stone, but her gaze was clear, bright, alive. "Semiramis," she said, not as a greeting, but as a recognition. I stiffened. "How do you know me?" Her lips curved faintly, not in amusement, but in something like sorrow. "We have known you," she whispered, "long before Babylon did." My chest tightened. Ashur-nadin lowered his gaze, as if he too felt the pull of something sacred, but the woman's eyes never left mine. "You walk as a queen," she said, "but you bleed as a woman. You flee as prey, yet carry yourself like a god." I swallowed hard. "I am no god." She tilted her head slightly. "No," she murmured, "but your mother was more than mortal." The air froze around me. My fingers twitched. My breath stopped. Ashur-nadin looked sharply toward the woman. He had not expected that either. I steadied myself. "What do you know of my mother?" The woman's voice softened into something that felt like prayer. "She was born of the water goddess Terceto, whose tears became rivers, whose rage became storms." A shiver crawled down my spine. "That is myth," I said quietly. "Truth," she corrected gently, "wrapped in time." I inhaled sharply. She drowned herself in grief. "No," the woman whispered. She returned to where she came from, returned to the waters that had shaped her. Her eyes gleamed. "And you, Semiramis, you were left upon the rocks, not by chance, but by devotion." My pulse thundered in my ears. My voice came out hoarse. "Why?" The woman stepped closer. "To protect you." The valley fell silent. All the hooded figures lowered their heads. The woman placed a hand over her heart. "Your mother knew," she said, "that a child born of divine tears and mortal blood would never be safe." "Why not?" I whispered. "Because such a child," she said, "can shape empires." The world blurred. Not from fever, from revelation. I felt Ashur-nadin watching me, not with fear, but with awe. The woman continued. "When you were born, the waters rose in unnatural tides. Storms gathered over the northern sea." The woman stepped forward and extended her hand. "Then come," she said, "we will give you back the strength your blood has lost." Her palm hovered before me, not touching, but offering. Ashur-nadin helped me stand, his arm steady beneath mine. When I placed my hand in hers, a warmth spread through me, different from fever, different from pain, ancient, deep, like stepping into a river that remembered my name. She guided me toward a pool, lit by moonlight, a mirror of silver water, enclosed by stones carved with symbols of serpents and wings. "This spring," she whispered, "is fed by the tears of Terceto herself." I stared at the surface, smooth, dark, shimmering. A shudder ran down my spine. "The water accepts only those who choose life," she said. My breath caught, "and if it rejects me?" Her eyes met mine, calm, unwavering. "Then you will die." Ashur-nadin's grip tightened. "No," but I stepped forward before he could finish. The woman gestured. "Enter." I removed my tattered cloak, my torn dress, my bandaged leg, my bruised skin, and stepped into the water. It was cold, shockingly, impossibly cold, like plunging into night itself. A gasp tore from my throat. The valley watched, the keepers murmured. Ashur-nadin stopped breathing entirely. The water rose to my waist, then my chest, then I submerged. The world vanished. Underwater, everything was dark. Everything was endless. But then light, not from above, from within. It bloomed through me, spreading through my ribs, my spine, my limbs. The water vibrated with the memory of something older than speech. A voice, not human, filled the depths, not words, not language, feeling, recognition, welcome, and something else. Rise. I opened my eyes underwater. Shapes glowed around me, shimmering spirals, waves, symbols written in currents. When I reached for them, they dissolved into starlight. Pain eased, blood cooled, wounds softened. Something inside me, a knot made of grief, rage, exhaustion, unwound slowly. Then a final whisper. Life. I surged upward. My head broke the surface with a gasp, air flooding my lungs, like fire and dawn at once. Hands reached for me. Ashur-nadin. He pulled me from the pool, his arms trembling with relief and fear and awe. I collapsed against him, breathing heavily, but the pain, the fire in my thigh was gone. He stared at me, eyes wide. Majesty, he whispered, voice shaking. Your wound, it's... I looked down. The flesh was whole. A scar remained. Thin, pale, delicately shaped like a crescent moon. But the wound was closed. The woman stepped forward. The water chose you, she said. Her voice was solemn. You have been reborn. I swallowed hard. Reborn. Not as goddess, not as mortal, as both, as neither. As the woman who chose life when death tried to claim her. The woman, she touched my forehead gently. Semiramis, she whispered, your story is not ending. Ashur-nadin exhaled, pressing his forehead to mine, in a moment raw and unguarded. Then he whispered, tell me how far you want this story to go. The night after my rebirth did not feel like night. It felt like standing between two worlds. One I had left bleeding in the sand, and one I had stepped into, still dripping with the water of a goddess. The keepers dispersed to the terraces, moving like silent shadows, tending to their blue flames. Ashur-nadin remained beside me, refusing even for a moment to break the thread of presence that held me to the earth. The silver-haired woman, the leader of the keepers, studied me with an unsettling calm, as if she were watching a clay figure she once molded finally stand upright. Come, she said softly. Her voice was not a summons. It was an inevitability. I followed her to a stone platform overlooking the valley. The moon shone high above, round, white, watching. She gestured to the scar on my thigh. Does it pain you? No, I whispered. It will, she murmured. When the time comes. I frowned. What does that mean? She touched the mark lightly, with the tip of one finger, where her skin met mine. The scar shimmered faintly, a pale silver glow. Ashur-nadin inhaled sharply. What is that? The woman answered without looking at him. The moon remembers. body remembers. This scar is no longer a wound. It is a prophecy. My heart tightened. A prophecy of what? She stepped back, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. Of your ending. A cold tremor slid down my spine. My ending. I repeated. Yes, she said. You did not choose life, simply to hide in these mountains. The world below is shifting. Your son feels the shadow of your survival, like a stone in his chest. I closed my eyes. Let him feel it. I whispered harshly. I owe him nothing. She shook her head. You owe Babylon. Her words struck like a spear. I opened my eyes slowly. Babylon rejected me. No, she corrected. Babylon feared you. There's a difference. I looked away, jaw tight. She continued. A kingdom does not reject its mother, even if the child does. The truth of it stabbed deeper than any arrow. I turned toward the valley, the blue torches burning like stars in a world carved out of ancient secrets. How does the scar tell my ending? I asked softly. She gestured for me to sit. I lowered myself onto the stone platform, heart pounding. Ashur-nadin standing close behind me, as if ready to catch whatever truth might break me. The woman knelt before me. Those children, she said, bear the mark of moonlight. When their fate is fixed, she placed her palm above the scar, not touching, just hovering. The crescent came to you because you have chosen life. Her voice softened, but it also means your story will not end quietly. I swallowed. How will it end? The wind stilled. The torches flickered. Every keeper in the valley seemed to pause their breath. The woman whispered, Your death, Semiramis, will not be an accident. It will not be exile. It will not be mercy. Her eyes locked onto mine. It will be an act of power. Ashur-nadin tensed beside me. No, he said sharply. She has survived enough. No more. She raised a hand, silencing him without effort. Your queen, she said, was born from a goddess and raised by a river. Her life has never belonged to man, not even to her son, not even to you. Ashur-nadin swallowed painfully, but said nothing. The woman turned back to me. The moon scar, she continued, appears only on those whose ending is chosen by their own hand. Oh, my breath hitched. Chosen by me? She nodded. Not today, not soon. A pause, but when the world begins to crumble, in the absence of your shadow, you will know. My fingers trembled against the stone. And what must I do until that moment? Her answer was simple. Return. The word struck me like a stone thrown from a great height. Return. I repeated. Yes, she whispered. To Babylon. Ashur-nadin stepped forward. No, he said fiercely. You saw what they did to her. You saw how she bled, how she almost died. You cannot ask this of her. I do not ask, the woman said quietly. I reveal. She turned her gaze back to me. You must return, not as queen, but as truth. I stared at her. What truth? She smiled. Sadly, the truth that a kingdom built on fear cannot stand. The words rippled through me, shaking something deep and buried. But if I return, I said hoarsely, my son will kill me. No, she murmured. He will try, but he will not succeed. Ashur Nadin exhaled relief and worry tangled in his breath. The woman rose to her feet, and then, in a voice that echoed softly through the valley of torches, she said, "Your son's fear is not your doom. His fear is your weapon." I felt something shift beneath my skin, an awakening, a stirring, long, dormant, a storm forming, a tide rising. The woman's final words carry the weight of prophecy. Semiramis, you will return to Babylon, not to reclaim your throne, but to reclaim your endings. And so begins the final arc of Semiramis, the revelation, the prophecy, the truth behind her bloodline, and the final decision she must make between legend and life. And so, as that chapter closed, I found myself